We're going to go to Iowa. Steve Deace is joining us. He's the host of the Steve Deace Show, The Blaze. Good morning, sir. And we've been asking our viewers all morning long how they're feeling about 2021. What say you?
Well, I listened to the two calls before I came on, and you had a gentleman who wanted to, hey, we've got to have some form of objective truth. And so his answer was to reinstitute the fairness doctrine where government's going to decide what's fair and what's not. Obviously, that's a great idea throughout history or not. And then the next gentleman complained that Trump voters won't accept the validity of the election, and Democratic voters accepted it just fine 4 years ago. Apparently, he was asleep for Russian collusion. Russia stole the election. Trump is compromised because of a P-tape by the Kremlin, and therefore he is their stooge, and they conspired together to steal the election. He must have slept through all 4 years of those allegations. So apparently 2021 is going to look a lot like 2020 already, apparently.
Well, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Realistic. I think some things will get better. I think a lot of people, regardless of their political instincts, really want to get back to, being able to have a funeral to honor their passing on loved ones, want to have graduations again and proms for their kids, things that can't be replaced in time that were lost in 2020. So I think some of our patience with that collectively, regardless of our politics, is already beginning to wear thin. But I really do fear that we are in a place right now of irreconcilable differences as a people. And when that happens in a relationship, you start forging alternative narratives. You start coming up with things on top of the things you already didn't like that you don't like all the more. And that's kind of what this feels like right now. It feels like a marriage that stays together just for the kids, but the couple is long since lost that love and feeling.
Steve Deace, what are the big policy issues that will percolate in 2021 in Iowa?
Well, I think what's going to happen here in Iowa will be reflective of what happens across the country. And that is the number one issue is what is the balance between public health and then the fact we have to live our lives. If you look at the implied infection fatality rate, which is the true measure of any contagion's lethality, if you look at that implied infection fatality rate from CDC, you don't get above 0.2 until you get into senior citizens and those who are elderly. Well, yet we didn't protect them with our mitigation efforts in our nursing homes. If you look at our current vaccination efforts, they don't seem to be a priority in vaccinating them either. And yet we continue on with these mitigation efforts but let's go ahead and keep the healthy people all locked down. And I think what you're going to see in this next year, you saw some of it this year with states like mine, with Governor Reynolds, and Georgia with Governor Kemp, in Florida with Governor DeSantis. But I think if indeed Joe Biden is sworn in on January 20th, and there's not that confusion, well, that's the Republican president, and he appointed Fauci, so maybe he knows something I don't know. I think you're going to see a stark policy difference next year, where the Democrats, for as long as they can, are going to be the party of a lockdown. And the Republicans now, with Democrats in total control, perhaps if they win the Georgia runoff, I think you're going to see the Republican Party led by Ron DeSantis and others are going to clearly be enough is enough. We have to get back to being America and find ways to protect the vulnerable, but still get back to being who we are as a people.
Do you think Kevin McCarthy in the House, the Republican of California, and Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, should be the leaders of the Republican Party in those respective chambers?
I think they should not be leaders, but they will remain so. It's almost impossible to uproot Republican Party leadership in Washington, D.C. It's so deeply entrenched there, but it's very, very deeply out of touch with where the base is at. I mean, if you look at, Mitch McConnell's last pitch to vote in the Georgia Senate runoff is stand down on voter fraud concerns, send a bunch of money overseas. But if you want an amount of money, actual Americans that would actually make a difference, we won't be bullied into doing that. I mean, I just don't know how that's a winnable election platform. But I guess, well, good luck. We'll find out on Tuesday, I suppose. And Kevin McCarthy is one of these run-of-the-mill Republicans. He'll get trotted out on Fox News when they're in the minority to look like Joan of Arc and talk tough. And then when they get control, we'll actually just kind of rubber stamp a Bud Light version of what we were already going to get. And the Republican base recognizes this. And this is why there's deep existential difficulty right now. I mean, 75% of very conservative voters in a Georgia survey USA poll just yesterday. It said there was no point to even voting in the Georgia Senate runoff. There's not just an existential conflict brewing with different cultures in America, but there's one brewing within the Republican Party itself. And Trump actually kept a lot of that at bay because he represented those people. But if you remove him from the scene, and now they've seen out in the open how little the Republican leadership really cares about them or stands with them, I think you're going to see that thing really spill over in 2021.
You can learn more from Steve Deace if you go to theblaze.com. Happy New Year to you. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Happy New Year, all of you as well.